Okay, welcome everybody. Do not move away from this podcast, no matter what you do, because if you want to know the real truth about how to lose weight and how to eat to lose weight, then you do not want to turn away from this podcast, whether you're listening or watching, because just between the guest, Molly Wangsgaard, and me, we have 66 years of clinical experience helping people lose weight, and we know what we're talking about. And if you turn away, I'm sorry, but you're going to go find some misinformation somewhere else, and you're not going to get the truth. So hang out. So my co-host is Alex Dushinsky, who
Hello.
is the chat GPT of computer science. And we would not be here if it weren't for Alex, because I have no idea how to work this thing. And it took me six
I
months to
try.
learn. So before I introduce Molly, let me tell you a little bit about her. So number one, she works with me at Transformation Weight Control, the program that I started. We have worked together over a year, just about a year and 8 days or so. I looked, and she's like from the new school of dietitians. That's fantastic. She's extraordinary, really. And so let me tell you a little about her. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist, and keep in mind that anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. Your plumber could be a nutritionist, but a registered dietitian nutritionist is different. Molly went to school, went to graduate school. She spent a year doing an internship in a hospital, knows all about all kinds of diseases and how to eat for those. She's extremely well trained. So the next time you see a nutritionist, check their credentials. You want a registered dietitian nutritionist. And that's what Molly is. But also, well, let me tell you this first. So she received 2 Bachelor of Science degrees from Kansas State University in human nutrition and kinesiology, which probably nobody knows, and I'm going to let you explain what it is, even though I loved kinesiology, but I'm going to let you explain it. And she has a Master's of Science degree in human nutrition, foods, and exercise from Virginia Tech. And she completed her dietetic internship, which I just mentioned, at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. No slouch of a place, right? Now, here's the thing about Molly that I really adore. Besides all of her smarts and her charm and everything else, what sets her apart from many dietitians, and in my 45-year career, I have worked with hundreds. I mean, I don't even know how many dietitians, but Molly is also, number one, a certified personal trainer. And her certification is with the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which is the most rigorous fitness training certification. And you know that because all the strength coaches from all the sports teams, they all do that. And I used to be certified by that organization, and they have the coolest exam possible. They show a video of people moving, and you have to analyze what muscles are moving. So Molly knows how to do all that. She's also a certified group exercise instructor and a certified health and wellness coach. You go look online. You try to find a registered dietitian nutritionist with all those other things. I dare you to do it. You won't. You won't. She's got
So
100.
that is definitely pretty cool, and I definitely will have to ask about those
Yeah,
certifications.
you need to. And let me tell you something else. We're never going to let her talk because I'm going to keep going. But her health and wellness coaching experience and education has come in very handy in our program. You know, in our program, we have weekly meetings. People come, and Molly is one of the leaders of the group, and she has done some coaching things outside the realm of, well, combining it with nutrition, but getting people to set goals and all that. She's got the head for all of it. So don't turn the dial, because she's going to really teach you how to eat and make decisions to lose weight. She's knowledgeable about all this. She has the science. She has everything. So it's really
Rich,
great.
there hasn't been a dial in 30 years on anything.
There hasn't been a
Just so you
dial.
know. You said don't turn that dial.
Oh, I
There
know.
hasn't been a
The other,
dial on anything
Alex,
in
the other
years.
day I was talking about rabbit ears. Nobody knew what I was talking about. We had an antenna on our house when I was growing up. All right, I'm dating myself. All right. I've known Alex since Abraham Lincoln was president. I'm going to date him too. Molly, welcome. Thank you. And again, I want to remind everybody, I have worked with Molly directly, eye to eye, for over a year in the weight loss program I started back in March of 2024. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to say hello, introduce yourself? Anything else I missed or anything?
Sure. No, you covered me pretty well, so I appreciate that. I'm excited to be here. I love podcasts, so it's exciting to be on one.
Great.
But I think I'd just share that I started off clinical so that I could get that experience and worked with people in disease states and post surgery and things like that. Did sports nutrition because that nutrition exercise piece, worked well for that. And really started weight management right from the beginning because it was a passion of mine and helped in bariatric surgery centers and a commercial weight loss program. But I'm most passionate about helping people feel better and improve their quality of life. So the wellness coaching piece that I do full time now really bridges all of that, because not only do I help people with weight loss and better diet and healthy eating, but stress and sleep and work life balance and
Yep.
all of that. So
Yep.
it's to pull in a lot of things to help with
Yep.
behavior change, which is really what it's all about in the end.
Yep. And Molly, Megan, our psychologist, and I are going to be doing a healthy aging and body weight workshop starting in September. You can go on our website, transformationweightcontrol.com, and find out about that as well, because Molly, Megan, and I will be doing that. So she has a broad range. So let me start by just asking you, since you said something that made me think of it, what is it that got you you said you're interested in all this. What got you interested? Like, was your mother or father a dietitian? Like, what happened to Molly that landed you here?
Well, I was a terrible eater and a picky eater growing up. I would eat brownies and Pop Tarts for breakfast, and I was forced to eat green beans and corn were like the only two veggies I'd touch. And I was not a good eater, but I was very active and into sports and competed well in swimming. And so each year in high school, my coach would talk about nutrition, and I'd eat a little bit better and a little bit better, just because I felt like it really impacted how I trained and performed,
Yeah.
and grew from there. And then just really developed a passion for exercise and activity and diet and how it plays a role in that. And then just learned more about how it helps, just disease prevention and feeling good. And so it grew from there.
All right, great. And you have a really good head for science because there's a lot of science to nutrition, biochemistry of nutrition, all that. So, you're well rounded. You're well rounded. Alex probably has something to say about as a kid eating one way and now eating another way, don't you, Alex?
Not really. I mean, when I
No.
was a little kid, I was somewhat of a picky eater.
Oh, you were? Oh, I
I
didn't know
were.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you weren't having Pop Tarts and everything like Molly?
No, I wasn't. I
Okay.
wasn't.
All right. I want to remind folks that Alex is now vegan, and when I first met
Yes.
him, breaking all HIPAA violations here, but Alex was like a 3-pack a day smoker, and he has turned his life around and real in a big, big way. I mean, the guy runs more than one race in a day, and just I'm very proud of him.
I'm
And
doing that again next year.
yeah, no, I'm all behind you. And again, we wouldn't be here if he weren't because he's the tech guy. Okay, Molly, thank you for that answer. That gives us a lot of insight. So let's say I'm the person who comes to you and I want to lose weight. What's the first thing you think about?
Well, I'm very curious by nature. So I tend to ask a lot of questions in the beginning. I tend to send people through email a form to get some information. But two things come to mind would be number one. One is what are your goals? What are you specifically wanting to do? Because that's going to be the motivator that's underlying there. But I also want to know what health conditions you have, because even if weight loss is your goal, if you have prediabetes or reflux or arthritis, I want to make sure that I'm supporting your health as well, so that those things can work
Yeah.
together.
And that's the advantage to going to a registered dietitian nutritionist, because Molly does have all of that background. She can talk to you about GERD or irritable bowel or any of the medical conditions that if your plumber is the nutritionist is not going to know how to ask. So this is really big. And as Alex sort of pointed out, don't touch that dial. Stay with us because Molly's going to teach you a whole lot of stuff. I'm going to ask you a little bit of an existential question. Can you describe your philosophy about food planning and eating? Do you have one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I do. I'm very neutral. I'm not in one camp or the other. And my philosophy in general is just to start from where you are and work and tweak and make changes from there. Because we all are dealing with, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of a way of eating and habits and preferences, our culture, where we live in the country, all of those things influence what we're doing right now. So if I was just to say, oh, you need to follow this diet or this protocol, it's not going to be lasting if it's achievable at all. So I really like to work from where people are and make changes from there.
Good. And, the title of this podcast is Tailoring Your Approach to Weight Loss with Molly. So that fits exactly what you're saying. So you're sort of looking at the whole person. It's sort of like a big holistic kind of thing. It's not like what in the olden days where you just gave somebody a 1,500 calorie diet and you said, follow it. You're not doing that at all. You're meeting the client right where they are. And
Yes.
you're not.
Yeah. So if I was to give a diet, or a meal plan, they
Yeah.
might smile and nod, and take it
Right.
with them. And they might do it for a week or two. They
Yeah.
might do half of it, or they might look at it and say, I don't like any of these foods. I don't know how to cook these things. And so it doesn't work.
Right. And
I'm
go ahead,
I'm
Alex.
curious. I'm curious. Like what I found, I lost like 45 pounds since November or something like that. And what I found was like it's the little changes. You can't make a big change. It's like little things, and over time they seem to have the biggest impact.
Yes. Yeah. What's sustainable has the biggest impact. And I'm not opposed if someone wants to do something a little bit more restrictive or a little bit more aggressive starting out, because that's when they usually have a lot of motivation. And if they see success, that can build. But I
Right.
tell them that's fine, but that's probably not going to be sustainable. So let's work together to do that for a while, and then we'll ease back into something more realistic. Because if not, that pendulum is just going to swing the other direction, and they're going to be very discouraged because all that weight's going to come right back.
Yeah, that's so consistent. I mean, obviously, with the philosophy at Transformation Weight Control, which is we don't want people to feel hungry, deprived, or restricted. However, if they come to us with an idea and it's theirs and it's going to give them that jump start to get going, but then we ask, how well has it worked in the past? So, okay, you could start that way, but then once it starts to feel, you talk to me. Is that kind of fair?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And the other thing that when you were speaking, I thought you were going to say you didn't, but I know it, is no judgments.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I do, not everybody that I work with does a food diary, but it's such a powerful tool that a lot of people do. And I really try to reiterate up front that there is no judgment. I don't care, if you ate the whole pizza or the half gallon of ice cream, don't worry. We set goals. If you did 0 of the goals, don't cancel your meeting because of I didn't do that. Let me do that, and then I'll meet with Molly. That accountability piece is really important, and there is no judgment. I told you I ate Pop-Tarts for breakfast and brownies for breakfast going up. I don't eat perfect, so I just want people to feel really comfortable and to be honest, because that's when we're going to be able to make the most progress.
Right. So if somebody were to come to you with maybe some sort of fad diet or some other thing they heard, you would be okay initially, like not challenge them, or you would go with the flow, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to have a conversation about, but why they want to do that, or what makes them think that that approach is right. But as long as it's not going to be detrimental to their health, or cause any massive muscle wasting, or things like that, I'll definitely support them and be on board. But maybe even tweak it, because that's the thing with some of those fad diets is you don't have to do it exactly right. You can make it your own and make some little tweaks or changes to fit your preferences, because then it's maybe you're not going to lose as fast, but if it's that little bit more sustainable, then you're going to have better success in the end.
Yeah, it reminds me of this Japanese proverb I quote quite a bit, which is chase two rabbits and you'll catch neither. And it's small steps. And that's what you're saying, because it's really true, right? Because otherwise it's not sustainable. So when someone comes to you and says, what's the best diet for weight loss or whatever, it's not one answer. It's sort of an exploration. Is that fair?
Yep. So really, it's personalized and individualized for each individual person in terms of what's going to work for them.
Okay. Alex,
Are there any? Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any diets that you do find detrimental? Because there is a lot of craziness out there these days.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, I mean, anything that really restricts major food groups for a long time. Like, I'm not a fan of juice diets, especially when there's no protein whatsoever in them and it's just juice, no healthy fat. If someone wants to do that for 3 days and feel like their stomach is smaller, and it is because they didn't eat food and they excreted everything, no big deal. But 10, 12 days, that's concerning.
So let's get a little bit down to the nitty gritty of it a little bit, because we know to lose weight, it is the basics of calories in, calories out. You got to burn more calories than you consume to lose weight. So how do you approach that aspect of it? In other words, if somebody says to you, how many calories should I eat? Like, how do you kind of handle the whole thing, the whole calories in, calories out? Because, we had somebody on earlier, one of our earlier podcasts, and, a calorie is a calorie. It's when you eat ultra processed foods and all that, but the calorie is the calorie. So how do you kind of approach how many calories should I eat? All of that.
Yep.
How do you?
So before we even get to a calorie target, which I usually get to with people, because lots of times they want that number, or they want to know how much they need per meal. So I'll get to that in a second. But the main, I think, strategy and philosophy that works really well has to do with energy density. And so a lot of times people think, I just need to decrease my portions. But if you go from eating 4 pieces of pizza to 2 pieces of pizza, you're hungry. Or if you, cut down that whole plate of pasta to just half, you're not feeling satisfied. So teaching them about energy density and how to fill up on fewer calories can really help them feel full and satisfied, but start losing weight. And also 9 times out of 10, eat healthier too. So what energy density is energy density is the amount of calories in the weight of the food. So fat is very calorie dense. Not that fat's bad. There's just 9 calories in 1 gram of fat. And protein and carbs are 4 calories in a gram of each of those. And then water is 0. So there's 0 calories in the gram of water. So when you eat foods that are more high in energy density, so foods that are high in fat, also foods that are high in sugar, because it doesn't take up a lot of room, it just dissolves and things are more dense in sugar, or foods potentially like crackers and things that pretzels that don't have a lot of water, there's more calories in that weight of food. And then on the other side of the spectrum, food that's low energy density is food that's really rich in water and fiber. And so your non-starchy vegetables, your broccoli and cauliflower and greens and tomatoes and bell peppers and onions, there's a lot of water in those. So you can eat a lot of that for very few calories. Other examples would be broth-based soups or things like oatmeal that's good fiber and good water. You can fill up. And so if you're used to eating a plate of pasta, let's say you have a plate of pasta, before you even add the sauce or anything on top of that, it's easily going to be 400 or 500 calories. Whereas if you had a plate of vegetables, you're maybe going to get to 100 calories.
Okay.
And so if people can not just take what they're eating now and decrease the portions, but to add these non-starchy vegetables or these low energy dense foods so that they still are eating the same amount of food, but their portions are smaller, they can start losing weight and still feel satisfied. So it's like taking your usual sandwich and having some, cucumbers and bell pepper strips instead of the fried chips. Still the same amount of food, but less calories. It's like getting the 2 pieces of pizza with a big salad instead of the 4 pieces of pizza. Still a lot of food, but less calories.
Okay. And when you say energy density, you can substitute calories for energy, right? Isn't that
Exactly.
what you're
Calories
talking
are.
about? Calorie
Mm-hmm.
density. So in other words, a cracker has more energy density because it's dense in
Water.
calories. There's less
Mm-hmm.
water, is what you're saying, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So give a couple. Just you were going fast. Give just step back for one moment and just give it again. What kind of high energy density food or energy density foods that wouldn't add up to the calories too much? Just give a few examples again for people.
Okay.
Like what would
Yeah.
that be?
So you think about, you want to fill up on fewer calories. So foods that are rich in water and fiber
Okay.
tend to have less calories. That's going to be all of your non-starchy vegetables. So the majority of the vegetables are very rich in water, low in calories. It's going to be broth-based soups, foods like oatmeal that have a lot of water built in. Your whole fruit can also play a role. It's a little bit more calories than the vegetables, but there's so much water in those that you can get good volume and start to fill up with less calories than
Good. Great.
other things.
So Molly, you're counseling me and you're telling me these, energy density food, vegetables and things but Molly, I don't like vegetables. What? And when you get pushback, I do. I love asparagus is my favorite.
Vegetables are life. That's all I have to
That's
say.
Alex. For those who don't know yet and have listened to our podcast, Alex is our resident vegan. So the man eats nothing with a mother, ever.
Correct. Or lips.
or legs. Right.
That's right.
Right. But so Molly, what do you do about like when you get pushback from what you've just described? Because I can just imagine some people listening going, I'm not going to do that. Or,
Yes.
how am I going to do that?
And I don't typically explain it like that. We talk about, protein and produce. We talk about simple ways to replace or to add in more vegetables. So I usually ask, what vegetables do people like? Because there's usually a couple. Maybe they like canned green beans, or maybe they like bell peppers and onions on their fajitas at the restaurant. So usually there's a couple that people like.
Okay.
And if we can start there. I have a client right now that's trying to eat a cucumber every day. He eats no vegetables, but hey, that's his kind of entry point, and he likes cucumbers. He wants to do one a day, so we're going to go with it.
This is the no judgment Molly. This is like meeting the client where they're at, which makes the most sense because, Molly and I have been in this business a long time, and one of the hardest things to do is to persuade people to change the way they eat. And
the other thing to get there, fruit can play a role. So your side doesn't have to be roasted broccoli. It could be an apple, because you're going to, that's going to be healthier and more fiber and water. And if people really are resistant to vegetables, then you can tackle energy density also by not getting the fried chicken, trying the grilled chicken. getting the sirloin instead of the ribeye. So trying to decrease fat is also a way to still eat the same volume of food, but with fewer calories.
Okay. So then the approach to the losing weight calorie equation is not something you might address at some point maybe, but certainly not in the beginning. Is that
Oh
fair?
no, it depends on the person. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yep. So some people were starting with just, some changes, because they're not open to keeping a food diary or tracking
Right.
or looking at the numbers. But a lot of people have been on this rodeo, been on this horse before, and they're like, what calories do I need? I want to get back to tracking, and I'm on all board, because that form of self monitoring is really really powerful. So I use the Mifflin St. Jour equation, which is an equation that can help estimate your calorie needs at rest. So if you were sitting in a chair doing nothing, just sit in a chair all day long, how many calories would your body burn? And you put in their gender, their age, their height, and their weight, and it gives a resting calorie target. So that is a good starting point, and then based on their activity, or we can decrease a little bit if they're pretty inactive, to give a calorie target. And even if they're not going to be tracking their calories all day long, it can even be helpful to say, okay, it looks like you'd lose weight on 1,400 calories. Well, how would we break that up? Are you a 2 meal a day? Are you 3 meal with 2 snacks? So that when they go to that restaurant that has the calories on the menu, are they able to eat 600 calories at lunch, or do they need to try to find something that's 400? That can be really helpful too, to break it down per meal. Not that it's a hard and fast rule, but it's a general target to help them start
Okay.
planning a little bit better.
So you mentioned the
And
Mifflin. Oh, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
do you recommend measuring food? Like I mean, the only way I can keep track of everything I eat is if I log it. And then there's some foods that you just don't know, like what does a pile of broccoli really look like? So you have to measure it.
Yes.
Do you recommend that, or is that too extreme?
I do recommend it. I don't have a lot of people that do it long term. Lots of times they'll measure in the beginning, so they'll use measuring cups to portion rice onto their plate, and then they can visualize, oh, what does a half a cup of rice look like, so that they're better able to estimate when they're at a friend's house or at a restaurant. So measuring cups are common. If they're a cereal eater, then they can get an idea what's in their bowl. It's great if you can do that, get a food scale and measure meats and things like that. It's really helpful, especially people that are trying to keep the weight loss going and lose that last 10 or 20 pounds. Having more exact data is helpful. But not everybody is on board with that level of detail and the effort.
It's
Okay.
hard to do for sure.
Yeah, and some people just are not good at numbers and math, and we've seen that many times, and it's not worth even trying to do that, right? So,
And the other thing too is I don't want people to get so fixated on the exactness, because there's no way we can be exact. Because if you look at a food, nutrition facts, you're like, ooh, I'm eating out of this package because I know exactly what it is. Well, it can be plus or minus 10%. And
right,
it can be off quite a bit. So
yeah,
sometimes it's better to measure for a while and then just trust your estimates, because we're never going to be exact.
right. Molly, I want to return to the Mifflin for one moment because you brought it up, and it is something we use in our program frequently, not all the time. But could you just go over it you gave the resting metabolic part of it, but could you just, for the people who might be interested, because you could go online and find a Mifflin calculator. I mean, all you'd have to do is type in Mifflin calculator and you'll get it. And it'll ask you for the same information you said, age, weight, height. So give us like a little more of a synopsis of what the Mifflin can do for them, for those who are interested.
Yeah. Yep. And officially it's Mifflin St.
St.
George. So
George.
I want to give Satch
Yeah,
St. George credit because
right.
she helped develop the
Absolutely.
equation and the research. So it's a great starting point, and it factors in each individual's parameters on where they're starting. So the older you get, the less calories you need. The heavier you are, the more calories you need. Men need more than women just because they carry more muscle mass and have that higher metabolism. So the gender, age, height, and weight all factor in. And then once you get that starting number, then it's a good place to work from, to add an activity factor, to factor in, are you moving around a little bit? Are you running, 5 days a week plus lifting weights? And it's never going to be exact, but it's really solid in terms of the best equation for the average adult and the average person with overweight or obesity that's out there. And it's a really good target to start from. And then we can always make adjustments.
So you're saying the first thing it'll calculate is how many calories at rest. So if you just sit all day, and it could be, let's say, 1,200 calories or something like that, whatever it is. And then you're saying you add in that activity factor, maybe you're burning 400 more calories. So now you're up to 1,600 calories a day that you've been burning, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, I don't, in true transparency, I don't always add an activity factor
Yeah,
based
right.
on what they're doing. So, because oh, yeah, that's right. Because you add an activity factor and then you subtract 500 calories from that if you want to lose on average of a pound a week, or 750 calories you subtract from that if you want to lose a pound and a half. And doing this for as many years as I've been doing, I tend to, for women, stay right at that resting metabolic rate unless they're really, really active, and then I'll give them more calories to start. Or if they're older and pretty inactive, I'll even subtract 10%. I don't want to go more than 10% below that resting metabolic rate. It's just too low. And I don't go below there. But I forget about that subtraction piece because I don't often do the activity factor.
Yeah.
I bet you've been doing it long enough. I'll take their resting and say, okay, you're pretty active. You're a young male. We're going to add to that. But it comes around to the same place just because I've calculated it so many times.
So you mentioned the number 500 in terms of calories. You want to just tell people how many calories are in a pound?
Yes. So on average, there's 3,500 calories in a pound. So if you want to lose 1 pound of weight in a week, you would divide that 3,500 by 7, because there's 7 days in a week. And that would be 500 calories a day that you'd have to be in a deficit to lose a pound a week.
Good explanation. Very good. A plus. It's not, it's so easy for us, but it's hard for people to wrap their head around these ideas. So it's helpful the way you explained it. It's true.
And there's so many fluctuations. We talk about
Yeah,
this all the time. You
right.
eat Chinese the night before that has, so much salt and sodium in it, and your scale's up the next day and you think, oh gosh, I just gained a pound and a half. Well, you didn't just eat, 5,000 more calories. You didn't, but there's those fluctuations. So you have to really take that weight over time. But knowing that, hey, you have to have a deficit of about 500 a day, does help people realize the limits that are
Yeah.
there.
You remind me, Molly, of you weren't in the group that night. Molly and I run one of our groups. It's called the Rainbow Group. It's the follow-up program after people do the initial program, and so it's for people who want to either prevent regaining weight or want to lose more. We think obesity is a chronic disease and it needs chronic treatment, so that's why we have that. Anyway, I was going to say to you that we were talking about how often to weigh them each person should weigh themselves, which I'd like to talk with you about in a minute. So anyway, I said to them, look, your weight could fluctuate 3 to 4 pounds in one day. So if you do weigh yourself every day, and it's going to make you nuts, because it's so one of the fellows in the group, and I can tell you later, I don't want to give out a name, but he said, geez, that guy Rich, he was right. I weighed myself every day and the fluctuation was 3 to 4 pounds, just like he said. And it's like the scale is almost like a random number generator sometimes. It doesn't make sense. And we need to educate people about that. To look at that scale as just information as a scientist would, but not, like you said, you have a lot of salty food the night before or something like that. But it keeps you in the ball game a little bit if you weigh yourself. I mean, is that your philosophy on weighing, on stepping on the scale? We might as well just go to that right now,
Yes.
since we're talking about it.
Yes. Oh gosh, I could talk about weighing a long time. So yes, I'm open, just like with any other diet. If it's going to really mess with someone's head and they're scared to death of it, it's not something they have to do. But I'm a huge proponent on weighing every day. Only first thing in the morning. If you forget and it's now 12 o'clock and you had breakfast and lunch, don't get on the scale. Just first thing in the morning, right out of bed. What it does, and research really backs this up, is it just helps people to understand their bodies, and it takes some of the power out of the scale because they can learn how their body fluctuates. Some people are like a ping pong ball and they have a lot of big fluctuations. But if they realize, okay, this is my fluctuation range and it's slowly trending down. I had a new low, and I had my high isn't as high as it was 2 weeks ago. That shows they're making progress. And then there's other people that realize they're working hard, they're eating so much better, they're exercising, they're doing all the right things, and they're really just holding steady. And there's some people that are more like a stair step. They just hold, and then they drop.
Yeah, that's our
And
pattern.
learning that about yourself, then you can realize, okay, I know I'm on track. I'm feeling lighter. It's not showing up on the scale. I know in a week or two that drop's going to happen. And that can be really freeing for people when they learn how their body fluctuates, to get a better handle on that.
So I'm conceptualizing what you're saying now as, if somebody doesn't necessarily want to use the Mifflin or count calories, it's okay. They start to focus on energy density a little bit. They start to modify, the volume and so forth or whatever. And then the scale is what's telling them in the long run, not day to day, in the long run, how things are going. Is that,
Yes.
is that fair?
But non-scale victories too. You
Sure,
have people
yeah.
that are their jeans are fitting better, they're just feeling lighter, they can see it in their face, or they're walking up the stairs and they're not breathing as heavy. So definitely want to focus on other things than the scale.
Absolutely.
But the scale is reinforcing. So I give the example, if I was going to meet with someone every 2 weeks and they came into my office and they were just feeling good. They're like, I've been on it. I've been eating all these vegetables. I barely ate out. I didn't have any French fries that I usually have a couple times a week, and feeling good. And they got on the scale and they were down 0.2. They might say to themselves, oh, why do I even bother? This isn't working. I can't lose weight, and feel really defeated. But if they were weighing on their own and they realized, hey, I've been lower, I've been losing, but oh gosh, I haven't had a bowel movement in 2 days, or I'm about to start my period and I know I'm retaining water, then it's less defeating and powerful because they know where they've been and where they are.
Exactly. The old joke used to be, because in our program, everybody weighs themselves at least once a week on the day of their group. And our protocol is first thing in the morning, like Molly said, without clothing, after going to the bathroom, before eating. And we want that. And there are times where I will ask somebody to just use the average weight for the week, or even their lowest weight of the week, as the quote official weight, because there's so much fluctuation. And when you do that on a consistent basis, it takes out some of the error, because it's a truer weight if it's lighter than, like that. You gave the example of somebody who lost only 0.2 pounds, but maybe 3 days before, if they hadn't been weighing, they would have known that they were 2 pounds less.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I
It's also, oh,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's also really, really important and powerful for maintaining weight as we age or preventing weight regain after weight loss. So if you just get in the habit of doing it while you're trying to lose weight, it's really, really important for preventing that weight regain. Because if you don't weigh for a few months and your weight is up 5 or 6 pounds, it's oh my gosh, this is going to take months to lose. But if you catch it when it's a pound or two over your regular fluctuation range, then you can just tighten things up, be more careful, comes down, in a week or two at most, and you're good to go. You're not on that roller
It,
coaster.
exactly. I'm smiling because I remember one time many years ago, one of the women in the group said to me, Rich, every time I have my period, I gain weight at different times during the cycle. And she asked me, Rich, does that happen to everybody? And my answer was yes. And I could look at a spreadsheet for people who are premenopausal or still getting their period. I could tell when women were having their period because there'd be this big bump in their weight, because it happens. And so women really need to be aware of that. It's not a trivial matter, and not to get crazy that that happens, because it does happen. Like so
Yeah.
many other things, we want to be careful. You reminded me of that. It was a very funny conversation. Everybody was laughing because they all thought, he knows when we're all getting our period. It was very cute. Okay, so let me switch gears just a teeny bit. People are losing weight, and you sort of suggested this a little bit, and then the weight slows down. So in our program, we have two main patterns, and I've been doing an analysis for 40 years, so I know it. It's a staircase like this, or it's a sawtooth. It's like that. That's the two primary patterns. So if you're keeping track of your weight at home, then you can expect it to be like this, and then this, and then this, and then this, or this. But overall, it's down. But what, Molly, do you do when it's going down? You're doing the same thing you've been doing, and suddenly it's flat for like months. So you're on what we call the plateau. So you have the strength and conditioning association background, you have the exercise stuff, you have the nutrition stuff. Put plateau in context for us, and how do you deal with it? Because everybody complains about it.
Yes, that's $1 million question. And it's not going to be the same for every person. So I can give a couple different scenarios.
Okay.
So sometimes people have been, making changes to their diet, and exercise, and life stressors happen, and things just have started to slip a little bit. So one scenario is, hey, is it possible to get back to some of the things that were working for you in the beginning? Maybe they were tracking their food intake and they've stopped doing that, and it was fine for a while, but now, hey, maybe that would be a good thing to go back to. Or maybe they were pushing their exercise intensity and now they've kind of stayed the same and it's not getting back. So, there's potential that things just kind of or slipping back into some old habits, and we can look at what was working then that they could possibly double down their efforts and keep going. There's also the potential that someone has lost a good amount of weight. They've been on this journey for a while, and their body is just saying no more. It's kind of saying, this is too much. We've had this stress on the body. I'm not comfortable going on any lower, and the body's fighting it, with its muscle efficiency and increased hunger and things like that. And sometimes if the person is willing and open and understanding to it, it might just be good to practice maintenance for a while, to not push it and not say, okay, let's try to drop calories even more, or let's try to measure your food because you're tracking, but maybe it's not exact. Sometimes it's not good to try to double down those efforts, especially after a long journey and the success that they've had. that it's good to practice maintenance. Maintenance is not hard. It's easy for that weight to go right back up. So work on solidifying those habits, staying in that range where the body wants to be. And then maybe in 6 months, or a year, if they're ready to tackle it again, start again. But sometimes it's helpful to just let that body kind of adjust to a new, possibly, hopefully, a set point that then you can target it beyond that.
So you're kind of describing riding the wave a little bit, is
Yeah,
what you're kind
yeah.
of saying.
The other piece, though, that I would highly recommend, and I recommend for everybody, but people come at it at different points in life and at different intensities, is strength training. So adding in strength training, building your muscles, getting stronger. And this isn't just, women with their bicep curls with 3 or 5 pounds, hitting those large muscle groups, the legs, the glutes, the chest and the back. That is over time. It might not do anything for a few months, but if you build those muscles and get that metabolism humming so that you're burning more calories at rest, that can also help people to break through that plateau, and even feel better, feel leaner at their current weight, by helping their metabolism.
Yeah. What we didn't talk about is when you lose weight, you lose fat and muscle. And that's what you're kind of alluding to here, which is starting, because I know for some folks, we talk about like, okay, let's stop on the scale for the moment and shape your physique a little bit. And because if you're losing weight, you're going to be losing muscle. I mean, you can lose up to 35% of your weight from muscle. And I don't have to tell you, lowering your muscle mass is going to lower your metabolic rate. And that's what you're saying, right?
Yes. Yeah. And not only the potential muscle they lost during weight loss, but there's a lot of adults who have never really done strength training. And so even just the aging process is they're starting to lose muscle that they didn't even have much to begin with. So yes, countering the muscle loss with weight loss, but just countering the muscle loss with healthy aging, or aging in general, is going to do a lot for them, even if it doesn't move the scale.
Yeah.
So
We did a study many years ago and we put 3 different groups on the same caloric intake to get them to lose weight in 20 weeks, and they lost about 20 pounds. But one group did diet only, another group did aerobic activity, and another group did strength training. And the people who did the strength training lost the least amount of muscle. They only lost 8% of their body weight from muscle. And that's with rapid weight loss, right? Because to study and we wanted to make sure we got weight loss. But the people who did no exercise lost 26% of their weight from muscle. So that's a serious difference in weight. So what you're saying makes so much sense. I hope people are listening to that, because it sort of completes the circle, if you will. It's not, we don't live in a bubble of just nutrition. It's the whole thing. And so you're hitting on
so
something really important.
so I do have a question around that. So my goal, I started strength training about a year ago, a little over a year, well, a lot over a year ago now. It's been like almost 18 months. But my initial goal, and maybe I'm totally crazy on this, is I like to eat. I'd like to get, like right now I'm, cutting calories, but at some point I'd like to get back to, I don't know, 3,000 calories, 2,500 to 3,000 calories. And if I have enough muscle mass, that it'll offset, that the fact that I eat more.
Mhm.
True or false? Am I?
True. Yeah. I mean, not
Okay.
muscle mass can help offset, but also like all the running that you do, the actual, cardiovascular calorie burning. It's all a balance. So
I
the extra muscle mass will let you eat a little bit more, but also running for 3 hours is going to let you eat more as well. So there's benefits of both.
Yeah, I've been running for a long time, for years, and I question like I use Garmin, I used Apple Watch for a while, and I question the calories that it reports for an
Yes.
hour of running versus what it actually is. I think I'm much more efficient at running at this point than what the watches tell me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because honestly, I should be dead if I went by their calories, because at the
Right.
calorie,
That's
there are
right.
days when I'm negative.
Yeah.
If you take that into consideration,
Yeah.
and that can't be right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the calorie burn, whether it's a watch or on a piece of cardio machine, it has a lot of variability. So it might be, let's say you get on a treadmill at the gym and it says you burned 450 calories. Maybe not. It could be off significantly based on the person and their muscle efficiency and their gait and all of that. If it's the same machine, or for you, if it's the same watch, you can gauge by if it's more, like if one workout's 450, another workout's it's 550. Yeah, you burned more calories. You can't say I burned 100 more. I wouldn't use the absolute number, but you can use it as a gauge for more or less.
Yeah.
But also with weight loss, your muscles, it's bizarre, but your muscles get more efficient in calorie burning too. And also with the more experienced you are with that exercise, you get more efficient. So
Yeah.
it's a benefit from a fitness standpoint, but it's giving you less calorie burn in
Yeah.
the long run.
It is notoriously difficult to estimate calorie expenditure in the field. There are so many variables. But you know what? This is the perfect segue, because I was trying to figure out how am I going to get kinesiology into this, and I just figured it out. It's the biomechanics of how you move that what is Molly is talking about. Because if you had somebody who swims like this or somebody who swims smoothly, they're going to burn different amount of calories because they're less efficient. If you run and drag your feet, or whatever, that's right. Do you want to say anything else about that, or because
No,
that's
I
your
think you captured it well.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do want to say, though, related to muscle, because I'm a huge proponent of strength training, and preserving muscle mass, and really what that does for healthy aging as well. Diet plays a big role too. So not only do I talk with people a lot about filling up on fewer calories, so lowering fat and adding those vegetables here and there, depending on obviously where they're starting. But protein is also really important during weight loss. And not just protein, one time a day, but the research really shows that having good protein spread throughout the day is important for preserving muscle mass during weight loss, preserving muscle mass during aging. So
You
protein and produce is where I encourage people to focus.
So you must have read my next question, because my next question was about macronutrients, fat, carbohydrate, and protein. Is there something you want to tell people about that? Like, how much should they have? Should you go that far at this point at the beginning? What percent of your calories are coming from? Do you get that complicated in the beginning, or what do you do? What should they do?
If they're tracking on an app, that lets them track macros, then I give them a percentage, kind of starting point. But if they're not tracking, then we don't talk percentages, anything like that. I like to make sure they're getting, healthy fat in there. It's not as common nowadays as it was in 20 years ago, when people were on that low fat craze and Smart Ones and Special K cereal and things like that. So people usually still are getting some good fat, but I want to make sure it's less saturated, more of the healthier fats, but really focusing on that they have a good source of protein at all of their meals. A lot of times breakfast is where people do the worst. So trying to start their day, and if they're intermittent fasting and just doing 2 meals, that's fine too. But making sure they get good protein at those meals.
Okay. You use the term macros. I just want to make sure everybody understands that that's just protein, fat, and carbohydrate. The macronutrients.
Yes, those are your macronutrients. So
Right.
your macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fat. And macronutrients give you energy. So they give you calories, which your body needs. Alcohol would also fall into that. Alcohol gives your body calories. It's a macronutrient, but it doesn't give you anything nutritionally. So we don't focus on that as much.
Okay. One more follow up to this. So you don't necessarily say to somebody, look, I want you to have 30% protein, 45 to 50% carbs, and you don't ask them to do that kind of math.
So if they're doing a tracker that calculates it for them, then we talk about what they want to shoot for. So if they're using like a MyFitnessPal and we can put in, 45% carb, 25% protein, 30% fat, then they can spot check throughout the day
Right.
to see where they are. And that can be really, really helpful.
Okay.
And I base their percentages based on, health conditions and their goals.
Okay. So
And how they were eating to begin with.
And what?
And how they were eating to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I won't put you on the spot and say there's one percentage of macros that is for everybody. In other words, some people need a little more protein, a little less, in the range of 30% maybe, or 25%, something like that is how you approach this.
Yes. So I look at how they're already eating, because I have some people that love fat. They love nuts and cheese and, the fattier meats and things like that. So I'm going to err and end up giving them a little bit more fat. I have people that are exercising a lot and, need the extra carbohydrates, or they're a vegetarian. It's a lot harder to get as much protein for a vegetarian. So, or they might be pre-diabetes or diabetic or PCOS, and they're insulin resistant. So we need to bring the carbs down. So I factor all those things.
Okay.
Well,
but
if you want a
no, go ahead.
I can, yeah. In general, 40 to 45% carb is typically good for weight loss. 25 to 30% protein. It's hard to get to 30 for a lot of people. Some people have no problem, but 25 might be more realistic. And then the rest would be with fat, which would be somewhere between 20 and 30.
Right. Okay. So if they're using an app, the app will tell them these numbers.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I'd like to switch gears just a little bit. Number one, do you recommend multivitamin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, not everybody's taking one, but I think it's a good, kind of extra just in case, because a lot of people in our toxic food environment aren't getting good vitamins and minerals. It's also unsure what we're getting nowadays from the soil and everything. So I think it's a nice baseline to have a complete multivitamin.
And what about supplements in general? Can you just speak for a moment, just overall? People are coming to you, they're taking this supplement, that one, this berberine, goes on and on.
Creatine, maybe. I do like creatine.
So creatine is something that is really showing more and more to have other health benefits. And I'm not up on it fully because I'm not as much in the sports nutrition world, but you used to have to cycle it. And now people are kind of taking that one dose all the time, and really finding, benefits for pushing themselves in their workouts, but also, healing and stuff when they tweak something. Aging, there's a little bit of potential there. So I'm for creatine. I don't push a lot of supplements because they're expensive. People aren't sure what to get. But there's definitely some baseline ones. Like a lot of people need vitamin D. Because we're not out in the sun, or we're wearing sunscreen, and there's been a lot of health benefits for having optimal vitamin D. Omega-3 fish oil or omega-3 fatty acids, we don't tend to eat enough of that in our diet, so that's really good for inflammation or lowering triglycerides. So those are the two most common. But I'll definitely research with people if there's certain things that they're on, because there are benefits out there. It's just not my niche compared to other things.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand that the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there is no oversight. So the supplement manufacturer can say whatever they want, and people just need to be aware of that and be sensible. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Do you go with that?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I get concerned when people have a dozen things that they're taking, because
Right.
it's not guaranteed. It's not going to replace the diet and exercise and things that they're doing, or the good sleep, stress management, that type of thing.
Right. Okay. Dr. Oz has an advertisement for a fat buster pill, and it makes me apoplectic. It's just they should take his medical license away. I mean, to say something like a fat busting pill, like
Yeah.
forget it. So we're on the same page. Okay. So for my friend Alex, I want, if you would, to just address for a moment plant-based diet, vegetarian, and vegan. If you could just sort of give a summary of what you think about that, because Alex hasn't really asked you any vegan questions, but I know he's got them. So I'd just like to get your take on that. And then I'd like to talk to you about processed and ultra processed foods, which I'll remind you in a moment. But first, if you would, just talk about the plant based just for a moment, because I know this is like
Well,
Alex's thing.
for me, I've been vegan now for over 8 years. And so I know it works. I'm not missing any nutrients. My blood work is good.
Yeah,
I
great.
have the energy I need to finish my workouts. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still going, at the end of the day. So um, I know it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's hear it.
So I'm just how I started out. I'm open to a lot of different approaches and styles. So I also know there's fantastic research on more of a plant-based diet because of all the vitamins and minerals, the fiber, and what that does for gut health. And your gut is so impactful for your immune system and mood and health and energy and things like that. So I definitely encourage people to have a lot of healthy whole foods in their diet, and the beans and the lentils and the fruits and the vegetables and the whole grains. But I also really value protein. And so I really encourage people to find ways to get enough protein, especially when they're strength training, and when they're getting older in age, or when they're losing weight. So I definitely, if someone is a vegetarian, we're finding those sources, and sometimes it's dairy products and eggs because they're lacto-ovo vegetarian, but lots of beans and soy and things like that. If they're more of animal product based, then we're trying to work in some of that fiber, and you can only get fiber from plants. So trying to work that in as well. I get nervous when people are vegan, especially just starting out, because there are definite nutritional deficiencies that can happen. B12 in particular has to be supplemented. Lots of times iron can be lower. Protein is often lower. And I think people can feel really, really good for 3 to 6 months because they made a massive switch. They changed from a lot of ultra processed foods and heavy saturated fat and all these things, and they feel great. But it can also catch up with them if they're not getting those nutrients that their body really needs, and really impair their health. So I get a little bit more nervous with vegan just because there are things that you have to supplement and be extra intentional about.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I
Alex.
do think, just real quick, I
Yeah.
do think that just like a lot of animal-based products are fortified these days. So are the vegan ones. So like the B12, there's a lot of plant-based milks and a lot of plant-based products which have B12.
Yeah.
And in fact, as far as I know, when you get it through the animal is actually injected with it. It's not natural there. So it's also like a fortified,
I'd
way of
have to
getting
look
it.
into that because that would be
I did
newer.
hear that. Yeah.
Uh,
Um, and then the other thing I'll say is that I think a lot of people that just start a vegan diet, and I did this too, continue to eat the way they did, just switch to a vegan version of it. So if you were eating burgers and fries, you're still eating the fries, and now you're eating the impossible meat, the fake cheese, and all of that. It really, I found that, and really, I guess in the last year, because you could definitely be a very unhealthy vegan.
mhm.
Um, so in the last year, I kind of discovered whole foods and more salads, and I haven't had like the vegan cheeses, and on occasion I'll have the meats, but rarely. And I think that's the big distinction there.
Yeah.
I
And
think if you go that way.
that's where all the diets agree. If you do paleo or Mediterranean or vegan or flexitarian or, carnivore, they're all whole foods. That's the focus. They get rid of the ultra processed and that's often why they work, because we fill up on those whole foods, those nutrient rich foods, the high fiber, the high protein, and feel better, and also lower calories, because you're taking out the Cheetos and the cookies and the crackers that you can just eat and eat and eat and not stop.
Yeah.
And that drives those cravings. So
Yeah.
all the diets that focus on whole foods, which is most of the weight loss diets, even the fads, tend to work because they cut out all that other stuff.
Yeah. All right. We're sort of getting toward the end, but I would, I know that you wrote a blog for our website on ultra processed food. So I really would like to hear a comment from you on processed and ultra processed. We had Marion Nessel on a few weeks ago, and one of her books from 20 years ago, she was talking about processed foods. And, this seems to be a new idea, but so anyway, but she was talking about it 20 years ago. So could you just sort of give an overview of it for us? Because you wrote a very beautiful ultra processed blog, and people should come to our website and look for Molly's ultra processed blog. But could you just say a couple words on it?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, processing isn't bad. So pretty much everything we eat goes through some form of a process. If you take an apple off a tree and wash it, that's a process. Or if you need to shell the nuts, to get them ready to eat, that's a process. So the processing part isn't bad. It's the ultra processed is where you tend to add fat, sugar, and or salt. And those are things that really drive our cravings and make us want to eat more. So fat, sugar, and salt are typically added in some combination, as well as a lot of engineering that happens with artificial colorings and flavorings and ingredients, and the manipulating of a food, that it gets to this ultra processed state that really is called hyper palatable, meaning it really makes us crave and want to eat more. And that's what the food industry wants to sell more. So they have, researchers and food scientists and stuff that try to figure out how can we make this even better so people can't just eat one, they keep coming back for more. So when you think about ultra processed foods, it's a spectrum from unprocessed and minimal processing. But if you couldn't recreate it in your kitchen, so could you make an Oreo cookie? Could you make, Spam? Could you make, fruit snacks, that type of thing? Usually we can't make these in our kitchen, then it falls into that ultra processed category. And 60 to 70% of what Americans are eating fall into that ultra processed camp right now. So starting to cut back on those and doing more whole foods, not only will help nutrition, but it can also really help that craving and that drive to eat and that food noise. That's, the brownies call me from the other room. The apple typically does not.
Yeah.
Ever. So
Right.
The more that you can clean up your environment so that you don't have all those temptations. We talk a lot about habits and environment and seeing that food, but kind of finishing up your environment really has a big impact on that drive to eat and your ability to make behavior changes.
Okay. So the last thing I was going to ask you about was cravings, and you sort of already addressed it, that the cravings for these processed and ultra processed, and the food manufacturers really know how to get us to crave. I mean, they know the perfect amount of salt and sugar and fat, and they're very smart about it. So so what you're saying is the cravings will sort of diminish as you clean up that part of your diet a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, it can help. It can make a big difference, and a healthier gut microbiome can help that too, obviously over time. But everybody's different. When I talk with people about cravings or sweets, I have some people that they learn, hey, if I just have a bite or two, or I have, two chocolate covered almonds after dinner, I'm good. And they're fine, and they just need that little bit of sweet. But then there's a lot of other people that have a bite or two, and it spurs them on, like they can't stop thinking about it. They're going to go back to the kitchen, they're going to go back for more, or they had a bite or two at the restaurant, but then they get home and they dig into the ice cream. Like it really spurs on that drive to eat. So some people realize that for a while they need to say none at all, because that craving just gets so reinforced by even having a little bit.
So that's what you say to folks like that who just are obsessed. The craving is so strong.
If they can. I don't want to tell anybody, hey, you can't ever,
Right.
have this. But I've seen it time and time again, and experienced it with people, that for some people, if they just say, hey, kind of like dry January for no alcohol at the start of the year, if they can say, hey, I want to do no added sugar or no true dessert, for a stretch, and realize they're successful. And honestly, what happens to most people is it frees them up. They don't have the guilt and stuff like that, because it's just not an option right now. That then they can really learn that it isn't that crucial part of their life that it always was, and eventually they can bring it back, usually in smaller amounts, and then maybe it's gonna swing the other way, and then they'll pull it back again. It's definitely a journey, but for some people, ex, you know avoiding certain things for a while can really help to
Yeah.
to have success.
I always would always would bring up how people give up certain things for Lent, and how do they do it, right? And so it's sort of interesting. Yeah. Okay. We are at 1 hour and almost 15 minutes, so I think we'll start to wrap up. This has been really enlightening and invigorating, I think, and probably uh, spurring some people on to making some changes that are not that difficult. I mean, the way the nice way, the non-judgmental way that you present this is doable. It's one step at a time, and slowly, and what's comfortable. One thing you had said earlier that made me think of this, which is we do in the program a lot, which is nothing's forever. If you find something that works, work it until it stops, and then do something else, and you can always go back. Because I think people make that cognitive error that you have to stick with the same thing all the time. And you were kind of saying that, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think that's what you were saying. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah. There's a lot of strategies or tools in the toolbox, and so really finding what works for somebody now. But people need to be prepared. If they're working on losing weight right now in their 40s, they need to be prepared that there's going to be a shift in their 50s, and they're going to have to make some other changes, because our metabolism does slow down.
right?
So
Oh, so does everybody need to see a registered dietitian, Molly?
good question. I think it would be extremely helpful, especially depending on what their goals are, finding the dietitian that fits their niche, because nutrition is a huge science. So there are people that come to me and I say, I don't know a whole bunch about that condition and that type of thing. And so I can help them find somebody that is an expert in that. But I also work with a lot of people that just want that accountability, that non-judgmental approach, and that support with behavior change.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that really, makes a difference.
I answer that question frequently. There's not a year in my long life that I have ever done my taxes. My accountant does it because I have no interest. And so I think if you're struggling with this and you don't understand it, then seeing a registered dietitian does make sense. Because if you didn't know how to do your taxes, you would go to an accountant. So why wouldn't you spend a little bit extra money. You don't have to go forever, but to do it. So how does somebody find a registered dietitian nutritionist in a way that makes sense and that they know that it's going to be, a reliable source? What do people do?
Yeah. So a lot of times you can get a recommendation from your doctor or your healthcare provider. They might have dietitians that they work with, through their hospital or through their clinic. That's a good place. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics does have a find a dietitian, but a lot of times too, people work with dietitians a lot, and it I know I always like to get a recommendation from a friend or a family member or somebody. Like if I was trying to find a new orthodontist for my kids or something, I want to hear from others. So sometimes just asking around in your community can
Okay,
also help
good.
as well.
All right, good. I just want to emphasize for folks that you're really looking for somebody with that RD after their name, not just nutritionist. Because, like I said, anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. There's no law against it, and that you're not going to get Molly if you look just for a nutritionist. You really do want that registered dietitian part. Okay, so how do you want to finish? You have a message you want to tell everybody? Anything we didn't cover? How do you want to wrap this up? What would you like people to take away from this whole thing? Because we've covered a lot of ground and everything's important. So I turn it
And
over to you.
what are you having for dinner?
Thank you, Alex. I always ask that and I forgot. All right, let's ask that first. What are you having for dinner, Molly?
So my husband's the main cook in our family. So I am having, he made a frittata, an egg frittata with a bunch of vegetables in it and some Canadian bacon. So, and I love eggs, but I usually eat them for lunch and dinner versus breakfast. So I'm having an egg frittata, and then I have broccoli and cauliflower that roasted, and I eat,
All right. So
days. So
I have to say this. I'm reading Alex's mind right now. He's thinking, wait, she's eating an egg every day. And Alex is obsessed with this issue of how many eggs should you have.
well, I don't eat eggs every day. I'm just saying
Okay.
when I eat
Look at
eggs,
this.
like scrambled eggs or egg frittata, it's usually my dinner, when
Okay.
versus breakfast. But I'm not opposed to eggs at all. So here's the thing with eggs is they get a bad rap because of heart disease and cholesterol. The egg white is just protein. That's all the white is protein. The yolk is where you also get saturated fat and some cholesterol, but it's also where you get a lot of nutrients and minerals, choline and others that are hard to find other places. So I typically eat, like when I make scrambled eggs or we make a frittata, we use some whole eggs and then also egg whites, just because it brings down the saturated fat and calories. So it balances that out. But for the average person, the problem with eggs for most people is the sides that go with it. It's the hash browns and the bacon and the pancakes and things like that's worse than the eggs themselves. And when I have someone that's eating fig Newtons and orange juice for breakfast, I'd rather them add some eggs to get some protein and some healthy fat. So obviously, if they're trying to lower their LDL cholesterol, maybe it's an egg and a couple egg whites. So back to the beginning, it all involves in terms of health conditions and what they're doing. But I'm pro egg.
Okay. I had to ask because I know it was burning inside his brain. Okay, so let's get back to just an overview. Any takeaways you want people to come away from with this?
So I would say, because we covered a lot of different things, and I think hopefully people took some takeaways in terms of self-monitoring or weighing or energy density in vegetables and protein. But one of the most important things is just having that food available. So I'm going to get home way later tonight than I usually do, and I'm really hungry. And so if I didn't have something that I could whip up or heat up quickly, that's when people start to do the fast food or order the pizza or Uber Eats. So having that healthy food available when you want to eat is crucial, because
Okay.
you can have all the best plans, but if you walk in the house and there's nothing ready or nothing to eat, you revert back to those ultra processed and those more convenience foods.
Right.
So a little bit of planning goes a long way. It doesn't have to be, oh, what are my 7 dinners for the week and my 7 lunches? But we talk a lot in the group about planning, and it looks different for different people, but you do have to have that healthy food at home, and healthy food at work when you're going into the office, so that you can follow through on what you
Great.
know to do.
Great takeaway. All right. This is the moment where I give a little plug for the weight loss program, Transformation Weight Control. If you want to be exposed to me and Molly and how smart we are and good looking and funny and knowledgeable and motivated to help you, then have a look at our website, transformationweightcontrol.com. Look at what we're doing. Molly, myself, and our psychologist, Dr. Megan Pietruka, we're going to be doing a healthy aging and body weight workshop coming up in September. I'm running for people who are taking the weight loss medications, the only weight loss medication support group in the country. And I'm running that with another one of our dietitians. And we are doing a bang up job. And because nobody knows how to eat with these things, and they're not getting the necessarily counseling that they need because their doctor is very busy, or they're doing it on telemedicine. And they showed 25,000 visits to the emergency room because of the GLP-1s, and we've had nobody go to the emergency room. So check out our website. You'll see Molly's picture there. You'll see mine. You can email me. There's even a space there where you can make an appointment with me if you'd like, without any charge, and I'll be happy to do it. So that's my plug, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. But we are very committed to this, and we really want to help people. We're really motivated to do that. This is not making us millionaires. That's not what this is about. It's about helping you live a better life, a healthier life, a more productive life, and more well-being. And I hope that comes through, because it is what's driving us to do this. So, Molly, thank you very, very much. What can I say? I mean, it's like I get to see you almost on a weekly basis. It's lots of fun, and you're terrific, and it's a pleasure working with you. And to be honest, I'll just be unhumble for a moment and say it shows how smart I am, because I hired her. And she is a pleasure to work with, and so you would find her a pleasure as well. So thanks again for your time, and this was terrific. That's all I got to say.
Awesome.
And thank you, Alex.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex, for making this thing happen and running. And Alex is going to process it, and it'll be online through his magic touch. I don't know how he does it. Thanks again, Molly.
Thank you. Bye.
So is that a wrap, Alex?